Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. His phone lit up on the bathroom counter while he showered. Music blasted over the water and covered the small vibration buzz. I am Avery and 27, and I knew better than to look. I still froze and watched the screen glow and buzz at me. If I ignored it, I was loyal. If I checked, I was paranoid. Another buzz hit, and the preview flashed before I could look away. A name sat on top, a man I had never heard about. My stomach pulled tight because he never saved coworkers as first names only. I typed in the passcode with hands that did not feel like mine. He could have walked out any second, and I still opened the message. The first line stared back at me and punched straight through my chest. Last night was perfect. When can I see you again? Sat there in gray. No heart emoji and no pet name, yet still too intimate for a joke. My brain tried to label it as office flirting and failed halfway. I scrolled up once and saw more lines, short and playful and never neutral. There were jokes about sneaking around town and skipping real dates. There were reminders about a movie they watched that I had never heard about. Every line sounded like the middle of something I had missed completely. I hunted for anything normal, the kind of thing you could show your boss. My thumb kept moving, and that is when the shower suddenly turned off. The room snapped quiet except for my own breathing that suddenly felt loud. Water stopped running, then I heard the curtain swipe and the tap clunk shut. I tried to lock the screen and missed, and the chat stayed wide open. Panic hit and my fingers slipped and I almost dropped the stupid thing. The door swung open and there he was, dripping and staring straight at the phone in my hand. "What are you doing?" His voice had no warmth at all now. I could have lied and said I picked it up by reflex. Instead, I heard myself say it out loud before I could stop. Your screen lit up and I saw the text about last night. He walked closer and took the phone from my hand like I was a child with a knife. He did not even check the screen before he locked it and held it high. "You went through my phone again." He sounded tired, like I was a constant chore. I reminded him that the message popped up right in front of me. I told him anyone would look if it used words like perfect and again. He shook his head and laughed once, and it felt more like a warning than a joke. "It is a work thing, and we are messing around, so stop reading into everything." He rolled his eyes and told me I always twist harmless stuff like this. He said the contact was a buddy from the office, and I must have missed that story. I knew he had never mentioned anybody with that name, not once. Back then, I still believed people who sounded sure of themselves, even when my gut screamed. I started apologizing for how I reacted even while my head spun. I told him I should have trusted him instead of jumping straight to the worst story. The more I apologized, the calmer he looked, and the smaller I felt. He pulled me in and said he understood that my brain did this sometimes. I could not tell if he was comforting me or training me, and that doubt sat heavy. That same night, he put on his caring voice and called our friend. He started with "I am worried about Avery" before he even left the bedroom. I stood in the hallway and listened and pretended to scroll through my own feed. He told her I had another jealous episode over nothing and that he felt drained. Hearing my night summed up like that hit harder than the message itself. After the call, she texted me and asked if everything was okay at home. She used gentle words and asked if I ever felt out of control. I typed back that we just had a stupid argument and I overreacted again. In that moment, I chose his version over mine because it sounded easier to fix. Looking back, that was the real betrayal of myself, not the peek at his phone. I did not know the word gaslighting yet, I just knew I felt off balance. I went to bed beside him and tried to act normal and grateful he stayed. He slept soundly and I lay awake and replayed the text until it blurred. That night should have been the end of us, but it turned into the beginning of something quieter and worse. I did not know it yet, but that tiny buzz on the counter was the first crack in my reality. The next morning, he walked in with coffee and a bright grin. He balanced the cup near my hand like last night never existed. My chest still felt tight, but his cheerfulness made me doubt myself. If he were hiding something, would he really bother with this little performance? Or was this what hiding something actually looked like? He leaned on the counter and asked how I was feeling now. I told him I felt embarrassed for overreacting and snooping through his messages. He nodded like a therapist and said this was exactly my pattern. Jealous thought appears and I chase it until everything feels dangerous. Hearing my brain described like that made me trust him more than me. By lunch he had dropped a long voice note in the group chat. He talked about loving me yet feeling drained when my suspicions spiraled again. I listened to his recording with my phone pressed to my ear. He told them he stayed calm while I accused him for almost an hour. I had checked one conversation for maybe 2 minutes and now it was a meltdown. One friend texted me a soft heart emoji and asked if I needed to talk. Another dropped a link for an anxiety workbook like it was a casual suggestion. I thanked them and pretended this was all about my nerves, not his behavior. Admitting I saw something suspicious felt scarier than admitting I was unstable. Looking back, that is the moment his version of me started to spread. For a while he turned on this extra charming mode whenever we clashed. We would argue, then he would show up with dinner and a dumb joke. He called it making up and I called it proof everything was okay again. Underneath that there was always a reminder about how intense my reactions were. It sounded like a warning wrapped in affection and I swallowed it every time. Then the late nights started and he called them crunch time for a new project. He would toss out phrases about deadlines and teamwork while tying his shoes. Most evenings he left right after dinner and came home well past midnight. My instinct twitched but also told me I would look controlling if I questioned it. So I kissed him goodbye at the door and held my doubts between my teeth. One night he stumbled in late and I finally asked what time the project really ended. He looked puzzled and reminded me that we had already discussed his schedule that morning. In his story, I nodded with full understanding and wished him luck on surviving overtime. I searched my memory for that chat and found only a gap where it should sit. He watched my face while I doubted myself and then he looked almost relieved. After that, I started jotting tiny notes in my phone whenever we agreed on something. What time he would be out, which friend he planned to meet, how long he expected to stay. It felt dramatic, yet it was the only way to hold on to my own timeline. I told myself it was just to calm my nerves, not to catch anyone doing anything. Deep down, I knew I was building evidence against my own confusion, and that scared me. A few days later, I heard his voice drifting from the living room during another phone call. He dropped my name along with phrases like emotional swings and unpredictable moods. He added that he might need space soon if things stayed this intense around tiny issues. I stood in the hallway listening, and my entire body went strangely numb. He was framing me as dangerous and gentle at the same time, and people were buying it. Later that night, one of our mutual friends called me with that careful tone people use around fragile objects. She said she adored me, yet worried that my stress might be getting worse lately. She mentioned therapy and maybe medication in the same breath like it was a friendly tip. I nodded into the phone and agreed that I probably needed professional help to control this jealousy. At no point did I mention the message about last night or the suddenly secret overtime. When I lay down that evening, I tried to replay the past month in order. Every time I reached a memory that made him look bad, another memory popped up where I looked worse. I could not tell anymore which details were true and which ones were just his retellings stuck in my brain. I remember staring at the ceiling and hearing his voice in my head listing my flaws like a script. Back then, I believed the problem lived inside me, and I had no idea how he planned to push that story. The first real crack came from my banking app. I checked my balance during lunch and a charge jumped out. Nice restaurant, 2 dinners, dated on a night he was at the office. My throat went dry and my thumb hovered over the transaction like touching it might change it. I brought it up that evening while he tied his shoes near the door. "You went out that night," I kept my tone light like it was trivia. He barely looked up and said it was a team thing, nothing special. He tossed in a quick joke about how I wanted an accounting report for every sandwich he bought. That line stung more than the bill itself, which sounds ridiculous now. He laughed and tapped my forehead like the problem lived strictly up there. My cheeks burned and I backed off because I hated that condescending look. Inside, I still pinned a flag on that date and told myself to remember it. Later, I opened my notes on my phone while he showered in the next room. I had written that exact evening down as another long work push. The time he said he left, the time he came home, even the way he yawned. Seeing my own words clash with his easy story made my stomach twist hard. That same week he walked in late, again with his hoodie slung over one shoulder. When he leaned to kiss my forehead, a sharp floral scent hit me. It was not mine and not any detergent we used, and my body locked. He pulled back, dropped his keys, and did not notice that I had stopped breathing. "Did you grab someone's jacket at work?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He frowned like the question itself offended him more than anything else. "I hugged people, Avery. I am allowed to have a life." He exaggerated the word life, and my face heated like I had asked him to live in a cave. I mentioned the restaurant charge, and his shoulders went rigid for a second. Then he snorted and accused me of spying on his purchases like an auditor. He asked if I realized how controlling that sounded because apparently no normal person tracks dinner receipts. By the time he finished that part, I was already apologizing for watching our own account. The conversation flipped so fast it honestly gave me whiplash. He started pacing, hands flying, listing every moment I had checked up on him. He reminded me of the message in the bathroom, twisted it into full phone hacking. "Do you hear yourself?" he asked, and clapped once in the air like he was shutting me down. When I tried to answer, he walked closer and lowered his voice. "If you keep digging, you are going to ruin this relationship by yourself." He pointed toward his chest like he was the one holding everything together. I backed up instinctively and bumped into the table, and he instantly latched onto that flinch. "There it is, you get aggressive when I confront you." His hand brushed his own arm like I had grabbed him even though I had not. The whole thing felt so staged that my mind actually stalled for a second. Then confusion rushed in, and I started asking myself if maybe I had brushed him harder than I remembered. He stormed out for a walk and left me standing in the middle of the room. My heart hammered and my hands shook, and I hated that he would use that later. I sat down and went over the argument line by line like a crime scene. I could not find the moment where it turned physical because it never had, yet he sounded so sure. 20 minutes later, my phone lit up with a long message from our friend. She wrote that she supported both of us and wanted us safe. Then she slipped in one sentence about how hitting in a fight is never okay. I read that line 3 times before my vision blurred around the edges. He had barely made it down the block before reshaping what happened. According to him, I had grabbed his arm hard enough to scare him. He told her he left to cool off because he did not want things to escalate. In his version, I was the unpredictable one with no control over my temper at all. I wrote back that we had argued loudly, but nobody had laid a hand on anybody. Her answer came fast with a sad face and a reminder to be honest with myself. That part hurt more than any actual slap could have, at least for me. In that moment, I realized his stories traveled faster than mine ever would. When he came back, he was quiet and strangely gentle. He sat beside me on the couch and checked my face for tears. "I never wanted to tell people about your anger stuff," he murmured while tracing circles on my wrist. "I just need someone to understand what I live with when things explode like that." I stared at our hands and tried to match his description with reality. Yes, I had raised my voice. Yes, I had questioned his spending. Yes, I had mentioned the perfume. No, I had not grabbed him and pushed him and thrown anything, yet his story sounded more dramatic. A small part of me wondered if I really was editing my own behavior into something cleaner. That night, I opened a hidden folder on my laptop and started moving screenshots into it. The bank charge, the dates in my notes, a picture of the hoodie tossed on a chair. I was not ready to confront him with any of it. I barely trusted my perception. But I finally trusted this one thing, that I would need proof if I ever wanted anyone to believe me. Her first message hit while I was scrolling half awake on my couch. "Hey, are you still with his name?" popped up from a stranger account. My thumb hovered over her profile picture while my heartbeat spiked hard. Every part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity and fear teamed up fast. I opened the chat and typed back one word.
Yes.
She went quiet for a minute, long enough for my brain to run wild. Then another bubble appeared, and I swear my whole body locked up. I think we need to talk about him. I asked what she meant, and my hands shook over the screen. She answered with a photo before writing anything else, which says a lot. It was him at a restaurant table, leaning in close to her shoulder. His face was soft in that way he reserved for people he really liked. My stomach flipped because I knew the exact date from the tiny timestamp. I zoomed in on the bottom corner and saw T. He day and time. It matched the mysterious dinner charge and his supposed overtime shift. He wore the same hoodie I had folded after it came home, scented wrong. That detail hit so hard I actually laughed once, because what else could I do? It felt like watching a puzzle click together while you really wanted it broken. She sent another message right after the picture. He told me you and him were basically over, but you refused to leave. She added that I was volatile and unpredictable and might hurt him. Reading those words from a stranger made me feel weirdly exposed and guilty. Like my worst fears about myself had been shared as fun facts over drinks. I asked how long they had been seeing each other, and she typed slowly. She listed evenings that lined up perfectly with his miraculous extra workloads. She mentioned movie nights, drives, and sleepovers he swore he never had. There were gaps where he disappeared on her too, which almost made me feel sorry. It was clear he was running the same script on both of us, and that burned. Then came the part that knocked the air out of my lungs. He said you hit him once when he tried to walk away. She added a sad emoji, like she wanted me to know she did not judge. I stared at that line and my chest got tight in that familiar way. He was recycling the exact story he had already floated to our friends. In that moment I felt two things at the same time, and they fought hard. Relief because someone else finally confirmed I was not imagining his cheating. And shame because apparently my entire relationship had been reduced to a horror story. I asked her to tell me exactly what he had told her about me, word for word. If it hurt, but I needed to hear the whole performance. She described me as he painted me. Obsessed, unstable, spying on his phone every second, sabotaging his job. She said he called me dangerous when upset and emotionally abusive more than once. He told her he stayed only because he worried what I would do if he left. Reading that, I actually felt a wave of nausea because it sounded so believable on paper. I asked why she was reaching out now and not earlier. She answered that some things had stopped lining up on her side too. He forgot stories he had told her about us and switched details mid-sentence. She noticed how every ex in his history was apparently crazy in a similar way. She finally checked the dates on his messages and realized there was overlap. We started comparing timelines like two detectives on a messy case. I pulled up my notes and she pulled up hers, and we traded evenings. When I mentioned the work project stretch, she replied with a list of date nights. When she mentioned a weekend away, he claimed he was visiting family on my end. Every match felt like another slap, and also like proof I desperately needed. Even with all that, I still found myself defending him in tiny ways. I told her he could be really kind on good days, which sounded pathetic. I suggested maybe he was just scared of commitment and handled it badly. She replied with a simple line that hit deep. Being scared doesn't excuse turning you into the villain to everyone else. After that conversation, I did not confront him, which still surprises me. Instead, I saved every screenshot in multiple folders and on a drive. I captured the photo from the restaurant, the chat about my supposed violence. I wrote down the exact phrases he used about me because they mattered. I knew if I went in unprepared, he would twist it all again and I would fold. That night he walked through the door like nothing in his world had shifted. He dropped his keys on the table and kissed the top of my head. Long day, he muttered while yawning, and asked what I did with mine. I looked at his face and almost told him about her message right then. Instead, I smiled too tightly and answered that I just cleaned up and rested, while building a case in my head. I hit send on the group text before I could talk myself out. Can we all hang at our place tonight? I need a favor. My thumb hovered over the screen while the typing dots blinked back. One by one they answered yes, including him, like this was any normal night. I stared at those confirmations and realized I had just set the stage. Before anyone came, I opened the folder on my laptop and checked everything. Screenshots, dates, the picture from the restaurant, the notes I had kept. I clicked through them fast, making sure nothing looked edited or strange. If I hesitated, my brain would jump in and accuse me of overreacting again. I remember breathing in, counting to 4, and promising myself I would not fold. He walked in from work while I was still sitting there with the screen open. I slammed the lid shut so hard he flinched and narrowed his eyes. "You okay?" he asked while tossing his keys onto the table. "People are coming over," I answered, my voice much calmer than I felt. "Hey." Smiled slow and told me it was good I was finally asking for help. I did not understand what he meant until the first friend walked in. He greeted her in the doorway with this serious, tender expression. "Thanks for coming," he murmured, hand on her shoulder like he was hosting an intervention. My stomach sank because I suddenly saw the script he had built. In his version, this night belonged to my issues, not his lies. Everyone settled in with drinks and awkward jokes that died too fast. I caught a few glances between them, loaded and careful and heavy. He stayed close to me, arm draped over the back of my chair. Anyone watching from outside would think he was the supportive partner. Inside, I felt like a defendant waiting for charges I never agreed to. He spoke first, of course he did. "I'm really worried about her," came out in a soft, strained voice. He talked about how things had escalated lately and how hard he tried. He used words like spirals and explosions and walked everyone through his version. I listened to my life described like a case file and felt my nails dig into my palm. He told them I checked his location constantly and read every notification. He mentioned the bathroom morning like I had broken into a safe. He slid in the story about me grabbing his arm and losing control. Heads nodded, eyes flicked toward me, and I could almost hear the verdict forming. For a second, I actually wondered if I should apologize to the whole room. That was the moment something inside me sort of snapped into place. Not rage, not hysteria, just this sharp line of clarity. I stood up so fast his arm dropped from the back of my chair. "Okay, my turn," I said, and my voice came out steady enough to shock me. I walked to the table and opened the laptop with my hands only slightly shaking. I projected the first screenshot and turned the screen toward our friends. "Before you decide I'm unstable, you should see everything," he left out. The photo of him at dinner with the other woman filled the display. Same date as the work night, same hoodie he wore home to me later. A slow silence settled over the room like everyone's brains needed a second. He laughed too loud for the space. "That is fake, she's obviously messing with you because you're obsessed." His jaw clenched, one knee bouncing, like he had not planned for this twist. I scrolled and showed the matching charge from our shared account. "If this is fake, the bank is in on it too," I said, and my voice finally shook. I pulled up the chat where he described me to her as violent and dangerous. I read those lines out loud so there was no way to twist them. He talked about being trapped with me, about being scared I would hurt him. I could hear someone suck in a breath when I got to that part. My hands trembled, but I kept reading, because stopping halfway would kill me. He jumped in, words tumbling over each other. "She's cherry-picking, you know how texts can sound out of context." He paced behind the couch, rubbing the back of his neck hard. "Of course I vented, you all vent about your partners too." He looked around for support and for once did not get instant nods. One friend leaned forward and asked a simple question. "So when exactly were you planning to tell us you were seeing two people?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then started talking about emotional separation. He insisted we were basically done, just living together for logistics. I stared at him because that was the first time I had ever heard it. "I slept next to you every night through that separation," I cut in. "You told me you just needed space while work calmed down." I dragged my gaze across each familiar face, forcing myself not to cry yet. "You all only heard his fears about me, you never saw what he was doing." My throat burned, but I stayed standing, because sitting now would feel like surrender. Another friend spoke up, voice tight. "You told me she slapped you last week when you tried to walk away." Every eye landed on my hands like they were weapons lying on the table. I met her stare and answered as clearly as I could. I have never hit him, not once, not ever, and he knows that. He scoffed and told them I probably did not even remember everything. Blackouts happen when she gets worked up, he added, like it was a clinical note. That line did something cruel to my spine, because for months I had believed it. This time I was ready, though, because I had recorded the entire argument on my phone. I connected it and pressed play and let our own voices fill the room. The audio spilled out. Us arguing about the restaurant charge, about the scent on his clothes. My voice was angry, yes, but nowhere near out of control. There was no thud, no cry, no moment where anything physical happened. When the clip ended, he stared at the device like it had betrayed him personally. I recorded it because I thought I was losing my mind, I told the M. I needed something outside my head to tell me if I was the problem. My hands were still shaking, but the shame had shifted into something sharper. I am not saying I handled everything perfectly, I know I didn't. I looked at him and finished the thought, but I am not what he has been calling me. For a stretch nobody spoke, which almost hurt more than yelling. You could feel everyone rearranging their idea of the relationship in real time. One friend finally asked him why the dates lined up so perfectly with his absences. Why the same story about me kept appearing whenever someone new entered his life. He had no clean answer, only fragments and stutters and sudden outrage. He lunged for the moral high ground again. Accused me of ambushing him and dragging friends into a private mess. Said I was humiliating him and that healthy people did not collect evidence. That part actually made me laugh, short and bitter, because of course he went there. I collected it because I knew this is exactly how you would react, I replied. When I think back on that night, the strangest part is how calm I felt. My body still buzzed, sure, but underneath there was this quiet line. I realized there was nothing he could confess that would fix this anymore. Trust was gone, reality was bent, and I was tired of auditioning for sanity. Once that clicked, the fear of leaving shrank just enough to move my feet. I grabbed my bag from the hook and slid my phone inside. He watched me like I was bluffing, like this was another one of my episodes. Where do you think you're going? He asked, voice low and tight. Out, I answered, hand already on the knob. Away from whatever story you tell next. I opened the door and stepped through, while everyone stayed completely silent behind me. Walking down those stairs, I expected to start sobbing or collapse. Instead, I felt strangely empty, like someone had turned the volume down on everything. I knew the fallout with our friends would be messy and slow and complicated. I knew he would keep talking about me, maybe louder now that he was exposed. What I did not know yet was how long his voice would echo in my head, long after I left the room. I dropped my bag on my friend's couch and my phone buzzed. His name lit the screen again and again like it refused to stop. First message begged, second cursed, third swung back to begging. I flipped the phone face down and stared at the ceiling while everything inside me shook. I lasted maybe 10 minutes before opening the thread again. There were long paragraphs about how I had humiliated him in front of everyone. Then came a voice note about how I had twisted everything and ambushed him. The last text ended with "I still love you though," which almost made me laugh. I typed 3 different replies and erased all of them one by one. Anything I wrote would drag me back into his version of the story. In the end, I sent just 3 words. Do not contact me. He answered with 10 more messages inside 5 minutes. He called me cold, then dramatic, then mentally unwell, all in one rush. He threatened to tell more people how unstable I was if I kept lying. My thumb hovered over the block button while my chest pounded like crazy. I finally pressed it and the thread dropped silent. Silence felt wrong at first, like the pause before a jump scare. My brain kept expecting another ring, another alert, another little red dot. When nothing came, I realized how much noise he had trained me to expect. The next day, my friend walked in with 2 coffees and a worried look. You sure you want to stay here a while? She asked, sitting beside me. I nodded and heard myself answer like someone much older. I am not going back there, not unless I have to pack. Not everyone reacted like that though, and I knew it would happen. One mutual texted that she hoped I would own my part in the chaos. Another wrote that he seemed destroyed, and maybe I had gone too far exposing him. Reading those messages made my stomach clench because they sounded so reasonable on paper. I stopped replying to takes about who hurt who more. Instead, I sent one group message that said I was out and safe now. I added that anyone who needed both sides could scroll the screenshots themselves. Then I put my phone on the table and left it there on purpose. 2 days later, I went back to the apartment with my friend for my things. Unlocking the door made my hands go slick even though I knew he was at work. We moved fast, grabbed clothes, chargers, the laptop with my evidence folder. I opened a drawer and found his hoodie and felt a jolt like a bad replay. For a second I pressed it to my face out of pure habit. There was nothing on it now, just fabric and my own shallow breathing. "Trash or box?" my friend asked from the doorway, watching me carefully. I dropped it into a bag and realized I was done hunting for proof on his sleeves. That night she nudged her phone toward me with a search page open. "You should talk to someone who does this for a living," she murmured. The word therapy still scared me a little because of everything he said about me. I booked the first open spot anyway and felt both reckless and desperate. In the first session, I sat on a soft chair and blurted everything out. Not the whole saga, just the parts that still made my heart race. I told her about the messages, the bank charge, the made-up slap. I ended with "maybe I really am the problem," and waited for impact. She tilted her head and asked one simple question. "What if you are not broken? What if someone needed you to think that?" Something in my chest cracked in a way that was both painful and freeing. I actually laughed and cried at the same time because it sounded almost illegal to consider. We started going through my notes and recordings like they were witness statements. Every time I said I overreacted, she asked what I had physically done. Most of the time the answer was talk, cry, or check a fact he did not like. Hearing that out loud made my face burn with this weird mix of shame and relief. Over weeks I noticed how his phrases still lived in my head. "She forgets things, she twists everything, she explodes," all of that. I would catch myself thinking I am too much and then pause mid-thought. Whose voice is that, mine or his, became a real question every day. The other woman reached out again once she heard I had left. She apologized for believing his stories about me without checking. We sat on a call for an hour trading moments that still haunted us. By the end we both looked exhausted and a little lighter. At one point she asked if I ever missed him. I told her honestly that I missed the version of him I thought was real. The one who brought coffee in the morning and joked about stupid shows. I did not miss the man who could call me dangerous while holding my hand. Together we blocked his accounts from our phones, right there on video. It felt almost childish, like pushing a big red button in a game. Still, when his name disappeared from my chat list, I felt my shoulders drop. For once the quiet was not empty, it actually felt like space. Life did not magically fix itself after that, and I want to be clear. I still jumped whenever my phone buzzed for a while, body on automatic. I still opened the evidence folder sometimes and stared at it like a bruise. My therapist finally asked what I wanted to do with all that digital weight. We decided I would keep one copy with a neutral label and delete the rest. Removing it from my desktop felt like taking down a security camera. I knew what had happened now, I did not need to watch it on loop. Trusting my memory again was scary, but carrying those files forever felt worse. Months later, a friend invited me to a birthday thing he might attend. My first instinct was to decline and change my number again. Instead, I asked who else would be there and if she felt safe having us both. She answered that he had actually backed out once he heard I might come. That detail floored me more than any apology could have. The man who once called me terrifying could not even sit across a room from me. Part of me wanted to confront him, demand a real admission, a real truth. The rest of me understood that the closest thing to an apology I would ever get was his avoidance. So I went, stayed near the people who had believed me, and left early. Nobody pulled me aside to ask about my episodes or my moods. We laughed about dumb work stories and terrible dating apps instead. For a few minutes I forgot I had ever been someone's cautionary tale. Which brings me here, typing this out with my heart still beating fast. My hands shake a little sure, but my voice in my head sounds clearer. I know I could keep quiet and hope the rumor version of me dies on its own. Or I can tell it myself, messy and biased and honest. So this is me choosing my own narrative over his last word. I know what I saw, what I tracked, what I recorded when nobody believed me. I know the difference now between jealousy and instinct, between guilt and responsibility. And if someone ever tries to rewrite me again, I will not wait for proof to walk out the door.